Brad Sham, who's been calling Dallas Cowboys football since 1984, and he's kind enough to join me in studio here in Minnesota prior to tonight's big Cowboys-Vikings game to kick off Week 13. You sound like, Brad, you were having a ball calling these games.
Who wouldn't be?
You know, it just sounds I've heard you, I've been listening to you for so long, and it sounds like you are enjoying watching all-time stuff.
I mean, they're 10-1. You know, that doesn't happen. And look, I've been lucky enough. 84 was my first year doing play-by-play. I was with Vern Lundquist in 76 doing colors. So you over that period of time, as you know, you'll experience teams that are good that were supposed to be good, teams that are bad that were supposed to be good, teams that are good that were supposed to be good, teams that are good that you had no idea what they were going to be, but you were afraid they were going to be bad. And we've had that a couple of times. Sure. And so that's what this is. And that's more fun. Now, I have people stop me in my synagogue every day saying, well, you're having fun this year, aren't you? And I tell them, I always have fun. This job, when they were 3-13, when they were 4-12, I had fun. This beats working. But is it more fun? Well, sure, it's more fun. There is something, the town, this is more important than what it sounds like I'm doing.
Sure.
The town is energized by Prescott, especially. And I really think, Rich, that people love Tony Romo and were holding their breath every time he came in the game now. And there's just something about Prescott that is new and revitalizing to the populace. Elliott's phenomenal, and so was DeMarco Murray 2 years ago. There's something about Prescott and the combination of the two of those kids that have re-energized people.
Well, I mean, the conversation I hear a lot is that behind that offensive line, anybody could play quarterback, and you could just roll out the football and anybody could just run it, because DeMarco Murray did it 2 years ago. Romo did it 2 years ago. Now here come the rookies doing it right now.
Well, first of all, the coaching staff's having a good year. 2 years ago, I thought the coaching staff had a good year. Last year, I did not think the coaching staff had such a good year, because when Romo got hurt, I thought that they were a little conservative. I don't know what Brandon Weeden and or Matt Castle might have been able to accomplish, but I think that they thought that, okay, Romo's coming back pretty soon. Let's not go crazy. Let's just win a few, and he'll come back and save us. And so when you don't even know you're doing it, you suddenly are not coaching to win. And so I thought they had the wraps on those guys a little bit. In the case of the runner, you know, they screwed around trying to get Joseph Randle to be the guy before they realized that McFadden might be a better fit than Randle. It took them over a third of the season to get to McFadden, who wound up the fourth leading rusher in the league. But they had other injuries, too, that really impacted them. And so it was a team. These things are team efforts, win or lose, and it was a team effort. And so this year, I think they went into it saying, whatever happens, they didn't know Romo was going to get hurt, and they didn't know Kellen Moore was going to get hurt.
Yeah, amazing. Because Dak was going to go redshirt this year, right?
And
that was the plan.
This is what happened with him in high school and in college. Two guys got hurt. He stepped in. And those guys, Dallas Morning News did a great piece about 2 weeks ago interviewing the quarterbacks at his high school and at Mississippi State, who were the second guy to get hurt for him to step in and play. And, he went to training camp fighting with Jamil Showers for the third quarterback job.
Unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable.
And that's why they can't take credit for him. They drafted Charles Tapper in the fourth round before they drafted him. They tried to get Paxton Lynch. They tried to get Connor Cook. Okay, we'll take him.
And look how it's worked out. Brad Sham, longtime voice of the Dallas Cowboys, 38th season as the play-by-play man calling Cowboys football, joining me here in Minnesota on the Rich Eisen Show. So how is Romo, best you can tell?
As good as you could hope for. He's a tremendous competitor.
Yeah, indeed.
And finally, he's gotten smarter every year. One of the things I respect about him the most is that he has found something to improve by working on it mentally and then mechanically every year. Footwork, grip, arm slot, something different. And he really felt he'd put his core problems that resulted from the past back issues behind him. He was ready to go. He felt like, and he could look around. They had Elliott, and Ron Leary's a big plus in the offensive line, making it gel, and they're looking around. He said, let's go. And that's why he said it was gutting to him to have the injury, not to lose the job to Prescott. By that time, the gutting had already happened. He was ready to go. So now, no one knew that he wasn't going to be stepping back in. And then all of a sudden, you're just winning all the time. And the coaches have to feel the locker room. You know that. You walk in there and you see, what's going on in here?
Was there a split in that locker room at any point? Like there were Romo guys and Prescott guys?
No, because first of all, one of the things they've been successful at doing is getting rid of the kind of guys who might foment that. And you can't not like Dak Prescott. If you're around him and you watch how he is. I went up to offensive linemen, no microphones, the first week of the season, coming out of preseason, because I know those guys pretty well.
Sure.
And I would take them aside and say, what don't I know? How is he in the huddle? How is he their eyes got big, like 50-cent pieces. And veteran offensive lineman who said, he's great. And nothing rattles him.
Seems incredible. I mean, it's incredible. And
it's not all perfect. He's sure. He's leaving stuff on the field that in 2 years he'll see better. And are there things that Romo would see? Of course there are, but nothing rattles him. No situation scares him. Nothing's too big for him.
Has anything in your years of watching Dallas Cowboys football, triplets and anything compare to what has happened?
This. Not because of that position and what was expected. If he hadn't had the DUI, he'd have been a third-round pick, right, instead of a fourth. So we know that the league sometimes makes those mistakes. Best example is Russell Wilson. If anybody knew Russell Wilson was going to be Russell Wilson, he wouldn't have been drafted in the third round.
Brady's another perfect example.
Brady's another great example. But they don't happen very often.
No.
So with him, once they got through preseason and you could see that those situations, he's a different guy running the team than he is in drills. That was the one thing I could see in training. Even I could see in training camp. You see him in 7-on-7, and he's a little
tentative,
clunky, the footwork,
okay.
and then you get into a scrimmage, and the idea is to move the ball down the field. Oh, well, that's a different guy. This guy's a born leader now, and that's what players and the community are responding to.
Brad Sham joining me here in the Rich Eisen Show studio. Let's take a break, come back. We'll talk a little bit more about tonight's game specifically, please, and where you think this is all heading. Brad Sham, longtime voice of the Dallas Cowboys, and maybe we'll get it for about a 5-minute segment. Little Vern, because we had him on the show yesterday.
Yeah, you'll need more than 5 minutes for me to talk about Vern.
Okay, Brad Sham, back here on the Rich Eisen Show from Minnesota in a moment.
Welcome back, the Rich Eisen Show.
We're back in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tonight's Thursday night football game will be on NFL Network and on NBC, but also on the Dallas Cowboys radio network with Brad Sham calling the action. So you said you called how many years of games with Vern? Eight.
Hey, I was the albatross around his neck for 8 years.
Now, what was that like with the hat, Landry and Staubach and
I was in my 20s. And you remember what Ann Richards said about George Bush in the campaign, that he was born on third base and thought he'd hit a triple, which was I thought a little harsh for George Bush, but right. That was me. I walked into a team that in the middle of the 76 season that was a dynasty for over 10 years. They didn't win a playoff game in 76. In 77, they drafted Dorsett. They went to and won the Super Bowl. And I thought, okay. And then the next year, they went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Steelers. But at the end of the second year, I said, okay, I figured this out. You go to training camp for 6 weeks, and you finished working in February.
And Vern was sitting next to you the whole time?
And such a generous teacher without intending to teach, and such a good friend. And I would sit when I started I hadn't done that much football play-by-play, and I'm sitting right next to him listening to him describe what we're both looking at, but he's saying things I'm not seeing, and I just had to listen.
Like what?
Oh, he could see blitzes coming. He could see coverages unfolding before patterns were being run. And so I just had to listen. And then I watched how he prepared, and no two guys, as you well know, prepare this exact same way, but there's no right or wrong. So what works for you, and why do you do this? And then we just became great friends and still are.
I've got about 4 minutes left with you, and I have so much to ask you. What was Landry like? What was he like being around Tom Landry?
The thing about him that people didn't know was how much warmth there was. Here's who Tom Landry was. I'll do this as fast as I can. You remember Frank Gleber? God rest his soul.
Sure.
Frank was the most naturally gifted sportscaster I ever saw. Died at 51. Very close to Tom, very close to Tex. Did both of their shows. Frank passed away 1985. Had a heart attack running. The funeral, back after the funeral, in the Gleber kitchen, he had 6 kids, I think. The 2 youngest, one of them is now the assistant operations manager for the Cowboys, and the other is the president of the State Fair of Texas. They both played high school, college football. Tom Landry standing in their kitchen with 2 grieving teenage boys, one under each arm, clucking and cooing like a mother hen, and comforting them. And that was the authentic Tom Landry that no one ever saw, because all they saw was what Dwayne Thomas called the plastic man, standing in the fedora, every hair, the ones that he had in place. That was focus. Aikman had that. Garrett has that.
He does.
Great ones have that. That's not who they are. Tom Landry. Who was Tom Landry? He was the guy standing in Frank Gleber's kitchen consoling his 2 grieving teenage sons.
Brad Sham, Cowboys voice, joining me here for a couple more minutes. What happens tonight, do you think?
Oh, hell, Rich, how the hell am I supposed to know?
No, I know that.
I mean, anything could happen. The Vikings are offensively challenged. Have you seen the Cowboys' defense? We're not talking about the 85 Bears. We're not talking about doomsday. Now, here's what they've been. They've been resilient. The offense has helped them, put them in favorable positions. I think the challenge for Prescott is the windows are tighter. The Vikings are so good defensively that the passing windows are tighter. If Dallas can run the ball, then they'll have a reasonable chance of success. They cannot turn the ball over. It's the thing the Vikings do best, take it away. The Cowboys, one of the things they do best is not give it away. So I think, I will tell you this, the only thing I'm willing to say is that a month ago, this was an L for me. There was no question. And now I think they can win. If they win, it won't surprise me. I'm not predicting they'll win. It's a tough place to play. But anything they do doesn't surprise me anymore.
And then lastly, the conversation nationally is that it's going to be a split vote for MVP.
Oh, who cares?
Well, but if there is who is the MVP of the Dallas Cowboys, would you say, from your front row seat of seeing this?
It's the offensive line. It's the offensive line. I've seen a couple of things on SI.com that have suggested that, and people say, oh, you can't split the vote. The reason this team is constituted the way it is because ownership and coaching staff got together in the offseason and said, what's our strength? Our strength is our offensive line. How do we play to that? That's why Ezekiel Elliott was exactly the right choice for them. Babe Laufenberg played quarterback 8 years in the NFL, my partner. He sits back there and he drools at the time that Dak has to do. And he played 8 years. He
great.
Never had time to do any of this.
Well, I'd love the time with you, Brad. We'd love to have you back on.
Anytime,
Thanks. You're the best. That's Brad Sham. Joel Klatt will be joining us coming up next to talk about what's going on in the world of college football with the Pac-12 championship game up first. Dirk Cutter of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right behind him. Hour number 1 from Minnesota in the books.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.